Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Nikki Lunsford, and we're here working with the Middletown Study Project. It is June 21st, 2017. We're sitting in Avondale United Methodist Church.
Correct.
In the heart of Muncie on 10th Street, which has seen a lot of different changes over the decades.
Absolutely.
So this should be very interesting for us. First, I want to know about you.
Okay.
Tell us about your faith journey.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you became a pastor.
Sure. I think that I knew that I was headed down this road probably when I was 16 or 17. At that time, you're looking at what you're going to do for college and where you're going to go and declaring a major or thinking about those paths. And I just took a look at what I was already doing, the roles that I played in my friend groups, or the roles that I played in high school or in the community, and it just made sense that that's what I would head into as an adult. I moved, or my wife and I, we moved after we graduated college. We moved to Muncie intentionally, specifically for Christian community development. Church-based or church-centered community development. We moved here in 2002, did some work at Ball State, and bought our home on 9th Street in 2003, and we've been in that same house ever since. I think that as I got more interested in asking the question, when we look at post-industrial cities, Midwestern post-industrial cities, mid-sized towns, middle cities, small cities, and we asked the question, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
What are the historical forces that led up to what we see now? And answering that question was, in part, seeing that lots of organizations, institutions, civic, religious, business, economic, had left places, and that had created a vacuum or a void, and we wanted to do the opposite. So instead of looking at neighborhoods or say South Muncie or East Muncie and leaving, we wanted to reform groups who would live and work and play, worship, raise their families, put their threshold, put their doorstep in those neighborhoods that a lot of organizations, including the church, had abandoned. Mm-hmm. If I were to list a handful of churches that we would all be familiar with in Muncie or Delaware County, many of those used to be in the city. They used to be in neighborhoods. And in the couple of decades after World War II, land was cheap. The federal government subsidized new building outside of the core of the city. Banks looked at neighborhoods and said, we're not going to lend here, but we will lend over here. And so the ones that weren't lent to dropped in equity, and people couldn't put new roofs on their houses. But they could build a brand new house just outside the city. Well, then the churches followed suit and left their buildings in town and moved out to what was going to be the bypass. And in some places it was connected. Other places you'll see on the north and west it wasn't connected in Muncie. But a lot of those churches, they left, but there are still people here. And so we wanted to do the opposite.
And bring them back in.
That's how I got here.
That's how you got here.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you become a pastor of Avondale?
Mm-hmm. I grew up in an interdenominational church. It was a church that was started by people who middle-aged folks who had grown up in mainline denominations, and then at some point in their lives they went to a retreat center, or they went to a conference in Indianapolis of a national speaker group or something like this. Some instance or some critical point in their life as an adult, and they had a faith encounter with Jesus. And when they came back home to their churches, which they had been in their whole lives, they were a little disgruntled because they had never been presented the gospel. They asked the question, how could I have grown up here my whole life and not been presented the gospel? And so that was the church that I grew up in.
Presenting the gospel.
Yes, but a conglomerate of all of these folks that had left mainline denominations.
Right.
And after undergraduate, looking at seminary, I actually wanted to choose a group to be a part of, even though I had been part of an interdenominational church or a non-denominational church. I went with the Churches of God General Conference out of Findlay, Ohio. They were not. I guess I want to stop there for a minute. I don't have anything else to say about that.
Well,
What was my point?
when you left the Churches of God
Oh, yeah.
to get to Methodist.
Okay. So I have joint licensure. I have a pastoral license with the Churches of God, Findlay, Ohio, and then the Indiana Conference of Methodists affirms that and accepts that.
Okay.
So I'm serving a Methodist congregation right now.
Right.
But I didn't grow up Methodist.
Right. So was there something that disillusioned you about the Churches of God?
Oh, no.
Or was it because this was a Methodist
The
church
East,
and this helped?
the East District of the United Methodist Church in Indiana,
Yes.
the superintendent,
Yes.
David Byram, is very focused on kingdom work, on missional work, not being insular, but rather growing, being vibrant, fruitful
How did you
communities.
find him?
He found me? I'm not sure. Let me think. Okay. The church that we had planted
Yes.
started in a garage that I owned.
Where?
Urban Light.
Oh, okay.
Urban Light Community
so
Church.
Urban Light was before you came here?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Keep going.
We had planted, it started in my living room on Thursday nights.
Urban Light. All right.
Then we moved to a garage on Sunday nights,
How many people were there on the Thursday nights?
20 or 25.
All right. And then the garage on
Same.
Saturday night?
Sunday nights.
Sunday night, 20 or 30?
Yes.
Were you worshiping in another place, or were you
Nope.
just this
Oh,
was your church?
So, yes, people were still at different congregations
All right,
in the
so
city.
almost repeating your parents' pattern
Yeah.
of pulling together people of different dominant that are hungry for the gospel
Correct.
at Urban Light.
Yep.
Thursday and then Saturday.
And very mission-minded. I mean, we had very specific parameters. We weren't looking to just grow a church with people. We were looking to raise up leaders from the South Side to recreate baseball leagues, basketball leagues, housing repair, businesses. And actually, out of that Thursday night group grew some businesses like In and Out Cleaning Services.
Oh, yes.
They're on the corner of Liberty and
Right.
the front
yeah.
street that's brick.
I'm familiar with them.
Yes. Intentionally started to hire people who can walk to work or who need a second or third or fourth chance at a job or who need a community support system while they find gainful employment. And it's fantastic. Urban Light CDC grew out of that. My wife got involved in Habitat out of that. And Andrew, we sort of identified Andrew Draper as the sort of the key leader on the church plant initiative. And so then we, on Sunday mornings on Easter of 2005, moved to a cabin in Heacon Park. We rented.
The church did on Sunday morning. So when you moved into your home on 9th Street in 2003, that's when all of this started rolling.
Right.
And Urban Light started rolling, and then it evolved into more businesses. Okay, I think I'm following you. And then 2005 was another turn point.
Yeah, it was almost like that initial group of relocators who didn't grow up on these streets or in these neighborhoods. Were kind of like a little incubator for a while that all of these things came out. Now, our intention has always been to identify and raise up new leaders who did grow up here and work ourselves out of a job in whatever initiative that we're working on. Rented 1 cabin, 2 cabins, 3, 4 at Heacon Park, and then rented the gym at the Boys and Girls Club. And did that for a couple of years. I pastored a church through transition or crisis in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
For a couple of years. My family stayed here, and I went there. Then the Methodist Church gifted the South Madison Methodist building to Urban Light.
All right. The pieces are coming
The district
together.
superintendent
Sure.
said, Josh, there's another church exactly 1 mile away in the adjacent neighborhood, Avondale. It's
Oh.
struggling.
All right.
Would you be interested in doing a revitalization project in that location?
All right.
I thought about it for a little while, and we came and visited and said yes. So I've been here for
good.
3 years.
All right.
That's how I got into the Methodist system. Although my grandparents were Methodists
All right.
from these same group of churches.
Interesting. Interesting. It's funny how things come and go and
Yeah.
turn around.
My parents are not from here.
They're not?
But my grandparents are, which is kind of interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. So what are your main responsibilities now? And I want to go back to your grandparents in a
Yes.
little bit, but what are your main responsibilities now?
How do I spend my days? Or
Yeah,
what are the
yeah.
projects I'm working on?
What's your main responsibilities? There's lots of details that you have to do, but for this church
Pastoral
in
ministries,
Avondale,
that's just a lot of hats.
yes, it's a lot of hats. So what are your main responsibilities?
Okay. Well, I think primarily removing figuratively or emotionally the walls of the church. That our activities, even our Sunday morning worship services, are hospitable and inviting to the neighborhood or to Southwest Muncie. We have plenty of people who drive from somewhere else in the county, and that's wonderful, great, and they're involved.
I think
But
you have a large Yorktown contingent.
yeah,
Yeah.
who have connections to the neighborhood. So creating a place that folks here can say, Avondale is trustworthy. There are people there that will love me. There are people there who are connected to resources, whether there's someone there that if I have a question about, if I have a legal issue, if I have a financial issue, if I have a housing issue, if I have a spiritual issue, if I have a psychological issue, there any of those things, like a holistic picture of the whole person, of all of life, that there are people there that I could go to seek assistance from, and they could direct me in the right place. I think probably the person who's influenced me the most in church development is a guy named John Perkins, and he's actually at the last season of his life. He was someone who was involved in civil rights. Probably his big breakthrough book was Beyond Charity. And I have found his values to be extremely applicable in community development because of Jesus through the church. So we take care of one another, but my prime responsibility is to create a space where all aspects of life can be attended to.
Which follows the large commandment, love your neighbor as yourself.
Absolutely. So the things that I want.
That's what's driving you then.
The things that I want for myself, I want for
Them.
my neighbors. Yeah, but I also, with one caveat, in terms of aesthetics or what you value as fun or what you value as important, you have to go one step further in that and value what the other is valuing. So you don't come in and put overlay what you value and then want that for your neighbor. You have to first find what they like, and then you get to know each other, and what you value and what they value sort of comes to the surface, and then what you create is something new. It's not like it's a tug of war where you try to determine whose values, and we're experiencing this on a larger level in the country as well. It's not, you don't need to determine whose values take priority. It's once you become together,
How they melt.
what comes out of it new.
Right.
What do you newly value since you now know one another?
Interesting. On this day when the Senate health care
Correct.
bill is being voted on again.
That's right.
All right, so this church, I want to hit back to that too, on the new and how you melded.
Is it today or is it tomorrow?
I think it's today.
Okay.
So this church,
Yes.
you probably experienced it as a child with your grandparents.
No, the one just south, which is Fountain Square.
Okay.
That's
all right.
where I would experience church with them.
All right, so this church, are you familiar with how it's changed over
I am.
the decades? I mean, what was it like 40 years ago? What happened and what is it like now?
Yeah.
What has been its roller coaster?
Okay. So in 1891, High Street United Methodist, which is downtown,
Right.
they sent a group of people over here while these streets were being laid out.
Okay.
And in fact, the farm property that was all of this area is just diagonal. The house is just diagonal to the church.
Okay.
If you look at the house that has the gambrel roof line, that was the farmhouse. And so they sent this group over. They met in a tent a few feet that way. Eventually built a building, and it was this building, but it was situated not quite in the same location.
This whole sanctuary?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
But not in the same location?
Right, just a few feet that way.
Interesting.
And then at some point raised it up, moved it over to the sidewalk. So we have sidewalk street approach right to our doors, and dug out the basement, put a nice eating fellowship hall kind of facility in the basement, and then in the 60s the education wing was built. So it was primarily a chapel
Yes.
church. People came, there isn't any place to gather, there wasn't any place to gather. You just enter, do the Sunday morning thing, and then you exit. There even the Sunday school lessons were just like that as well. People entered and sat in different sections of the building. Someone read a Sunday school lesson, and that was it. And somehow that fit with their worldview.
I don't
Go
think
ahead.
I've ever known a Methodist church without a place for a potluck supper. So that's
Right.
interesting.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Well, they added
So
it
they
soon.
fixed it.
Yeah, they fixed that. Yeah. This was a place where at one time, just across the parking lot, there were 2,200 people who worked at the 8th Street transmission factory.
Oh, yes.
And that hasn't been for quite some time. But at one time it was 22,
Right.
and it was 24 hours a day. So
that is right on the other side of your parking lot.
that's correct.
And
There's the 68, 69 acres
Oh, my goodness.
that has the
Yes.
3 brown spots.
Sure.
It's in the Racer Trust right now. The parking lots on this side are clean soil, but the large fenced-in area, lots of
Right.
things going on. So think about 2,200 people constantly in and out, and then all of the businesses and services that spring up right just around it. Then those same people who are making, with including benefits. Some of those wage packages were $40 and $50 an hour,
Right.
the equivalent of.
In the heyday.
Yeah, and so you could live right here. You could walk to work. You could go by the cleaners in the grocery store, meet your family for lunch at a tavern that was split into between family and bar, and there might even be live music in the evenings. It just worked. It was a
a
system
hub.
that worked. Yeah, and as that gradually, closed down. I can't remember. I think it was. You might need to edit this, but I think it was probably '07 that they finally shut the doors. But it was already in transition. The neighborhood was already in transition since then. But this was the type of place that someone might have 2 brand new vehicles, a boat, a camper, and a 1,100 square foot home. Right? That was just the style of living.
Right.
And they fixed everything that needed fixed with their own hands. Great problem solvers. Almost with engineer type abilities. Really vibrant community. And those folks that worked or who were in middle management, they also organized the churches, and they organized the baseball leagues and softball leagues and
women were home?
Bowling leagues. You would say some periods of time yes, and then wartime no, and then it changed after that concerning women. So all of my interactions, even from a child to an adult, women were always in the factories. Now, not every family,
Right.
but just in general. Both of my grandparents worked. Both my grandfathers worked here at the transmission factory.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And my uncle did between here and Borg Warner. So the question, how have things changed?
Yeah. So all of this happened. It's the heyday. Everything is going on. You've got your bowling leagues, your t-ball leagues, and then
There is another aspect to that I think that needs to be said. Well, let me just give you some of the artifacts of it.
Sure.
If you drove an American car, an American-made car, Chrysler, Ford, or GM, you were able, and in fact there were big signs that were on the fencing that said this. You were able to park closer to the factory, and it had surveillance, and it was clearly marked out. American nameplate only. Surveillance provided or something. But if you drove a foreign-made car, then you parked farther away, and those parking lots are the ones that are closer to the church building, and it clearly said no surveillance. There was a time that if you drove one of those little Toyotas or Hondas as they were starting to come up and parked it overnight in this neighborhood, that its tires would get slashed.
Yes.
I remember the first time I saw a construction worker driving a Toyota pickup truck, and I thought, it's over.
It's over.
Oh, that whole thing's over. It's changed. It's done. It's gone.
Oh, I see.
There was, and still remains, one of our biggest issues in this southwest part of Muncie is prejudice and racism. But it's not with the younger people, because there are a lot of younger people who have mixed marriages or relationships across racial lines. It's definitely with the older folks. That older group.
And when you say older, are you speaking 60 to 80?
Yes.
Are you talking 80 to 90?
No, 60 to 90.
60 to 90.
Yes. Just anecdotally.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Those folks have passed away or moved. The ones who kept employment through the companies, they moved. And so all of a sudden, almost overnight, lots of empty houses here. And although these houses were small, they were well maintained.
Right.
But since people have passed away, people have moved, no one wants to live here, it's an empty home now. And it may transfer down to the children who live somewhere else. And so we're trying to address those types of things.
Do you have any idea the percentage of homes that are vacant?
No, but Jenna Ashby at Habitat would know.
She would know.
Yep.
Okay.
She sends me charts and graphs all the time.
All the time.
Because a group through Habitat called the 812 Coalition
Yes.
has clearly identified boundaries, identified every home, every homeowner, all the demographics, all the stats, and are intentionally pulling resources from local and national foundations to not only rebuild the physical, but also the emotional, interpersonal, relational, familial aspects of this neighborhood.
Okay. So what about this church
'Kay.
now?
Mhm.
So it was full, it was bustling, and then the company left, the people left.
Yes. A trickle here, a trickle there, and got down to about, it was in the teens. Attendance was in the teens when I came.
Really? So, but we're guessing how many?
300
Okay.
or more.
And then, because there had to have resources to be
Oh,
able
yeah.
to move the
It was
sanctuary,
very-
build the
it was
basement.
it was a very well-off church. Anyone who was associated with factories, working, unions, some of the, even some of like the lodge groups,
Yes,
not they all,
But
many
many.
of them came here.
I see. And so then as they left, the sanctuaries left, and you've got 10 people coming. And what was the pastor like before you?
Okay, so here's how this went. They went through a few pastors,
3 years at a time?
less than that.
So the pastor parish committee was
Yes.
still active, even though, am I
Correct.
guessing, we'll go there.
Okay.
I have an experience with the Methodist Church, and my guess
Okay.
is there's 3 families
Yeah.
that held it up.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Are they still here? Tell me about them.
One of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Did they accept you?
One of them.
The other 2 did not?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a gentleman that was here for 8 or 9 years, and that was sort of the end of this being an active church. And then a woman pastor was appointed here, and
How'd that go over?
it did not go over well.
No,
No.
not fine. What you told you
Not because
mentioned
of
that
her.
but there
No.
was a lot of bias and
Yeah,
prejudice. And,
that's right.
And
Right.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she was, that was who was here right before me,
Okay.
and they the church sort of shrunk its giving in order to show that it wouldn't have enough income to pay her. The person who was here before that was an African American, and it was perfect for. I mean, it's exactly what the superintendent needed to do. I mean, that's exactly what he needed to do.
Why?
Because that is an issue of unhealth here, whether it be white collar, blue collar, male, female, black, white. Those barriers are, they're killing us.
Yeah. I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So he made that step knowing it would
That's
be
right.
a tough road for
Right.
that man to
That's right.
hoe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When I got
So
here,
we get to you
yes,
now. Now we're
we're in the
bringing in a
teens.
young
Yep.
Caucasian, and
Correct.
this was in 2005.
No. Here, I've been here 3 years.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You said you've been 3
So
years.
it would
So
be
mid-30s.
14,
You, yeah.
15, 16, 17.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Um,
So now what's the
no, that's
congregation
not
looking
right.
like?
August of 14.
Okay.
To 15 to 16. Yeah, August
right.
of 14.
So now what's it looking like?
A lot of people who had been on the peripheries,
Marginalized or just out
just
there?
out there because of a black pastor and because of a female pastor,
Okay.
came back.
All right.
And so we shot up quickly to 60 or 70. And, but not, it might have been people who haven't been here in years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, we're going to address some of our sin, unhealth issues. We're going to be about Jesus. We're going to be about discipleship. We're going to be about the historic mission of the church and things like that. And we dropped down to about 25.
All
And,
right.
yeah. But now,
But you're 25, not at teens.
right? Yeah. And now we're 40, 45 on
That's
a
where,
Sunday.
that's where you are now?
Yeah. And these folks, it's a great group. We haven't been in a better position than we are.
Right.
Since I've been here, we haven't been in a better position than we are right now because we're focused on the right things.
Which are?
People, relationships, attitudes. In Methodism, the terms that are used are personal holiness and social holiness.
Okay. That's good.
Those might be antiquated, but I think if you unpacked them, if you focus on those things, it's impossible to become insular.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy churches don't die.
Right. Right.
Healthy
Right.
churches don't shrink.
Mm-hmm. And they're generally outward focused.
Yeah.
And, okay, I understand the personal holiness and the social holiness. That kind of gets down to the basic 2 commandments,
That's it.
doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. It's not nothing new. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So aside from membership, what are the other key challenges facing this church
Yeah.
and the faith community?
Yeah. Well, the maintaining an old structure
Oh.
is difficult. You have to decide, are you going to keep the old systems, the old window systems?
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, our heating and cooling is the old roofing systems, the old plumbing systems. Are you going to completely update? And those are things that are not our main point of being here.
Mhm.
Like, we're not here
Mhm.
because the building's
Right.
here.
Right.
However, there is it is necessary to have a presence with a building
Right.
in a poorer community. That's my experience.
Mhm.
I came when I was younger. I was really into the idea of not having a building because of the expense
Mhm.
and the trouble that it could cause. But I think that was my own cultural sensibilities. But when I came and actually met and knew and lived here, I had to get rid of those because it just
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense. You need to have a building in poor neighborhoods, but not one that's just open on Sundays, one that's open on every day of the week for all kinds of things, where there's almost a constant flow of traffic that you don't know everything that's going on, that people can connect here with each other. People can come and pray. Thursday nights, we do the normal stuff of a study group on Wednesdays. But some of the things that we're thinking about are holding Sunday morning services outside for a period of time with a tent and things like that. On Thursdays, we have a community meal with this big smoker grill that we pull out to the corner. And at 4 o'clock on Thursdays, I walk through the neighborhood and talk and pray with people and tell them food will be ready at 5. And that's been tremendous.
Do you knock on doors, or do you just look for people who's out?
Both.
Both?
Uh-huh.
And do you have volunteers help you with this?
I do. Yep.
How do you get those volunteers? Who are those volunteers? Is it a normal group?
No,
or
it's
is
not.
it
It's
a
college students.
flux? Is what?
It's college students.
Oh.
Yeah.
What groups from the college? How do you recruit them?
The Revolution, which is a church that
Yes.
meets in the student center.
In the student center.
Yes.
Yes.
They've said, we will help you replant. And it's almost like the cavalry.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic.
Very good.
So I get to focus on strategic planning and relationships,
Mm-hmm.
which are the two things I need to be involved in.
Mm-hmm.
One-to-one, small group relationships, and then thinking long-term. So the immediate with the person, long-term organization,
Mhm.
and they have just filled in the gap.
Excellent. So
Of
they do
labor.
more than just the Saturdays or
Thursdays.
Thursdays. They do more than just the Thursdays.
Yeah, they
What else
are.
do they do?
They're sending, in their excess, they're sending musicians over for Sunday mornings
Excellent.
to play in the band.
So you don't have to pay anyone for music.
Right.
Excellent.
Yep.
All right. What else?
They walk with us. Some of them.
On Thursdays.
So there's one couple on Thursday
All right.
from the campus church who they've just said, we'll go down this street, come back.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go down to 10th, come back on 11th, and we will just start to get to know everybody right there in that loop. I'm doing the same thing the other direction.
All right.
I stop in. Folks here, they have a private, personal relationship with Jesus that does not extend to anywhere else except their heart. And what I
Okay.
mean by that is they're not involved in any type of community,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be congregation.
Are you saying they're isolated?
Absolutely
in general,
isolated.
Or faith-wise, or in general?
Both.
Both.
All the
yes.
above.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that it's motivated out of fear.
Mm-hmm. Because
Um,
of negative experiences in
No.
the past, or just because of insecurity?
No, I don't think it's negative experience. I think that if we were on the north and west sides of Muncie and you were talking with people who weren't interested in church, a lot of them would have some negative experience to share with you. It's
Mhm.
not like that here. It's that we have to be on guard all the time of anything. And so
So do you keep your doors unlocked all day?
when we're here, yeah,
Mm-hmm. But when you're gone, it's locked.
it is.
Mhm.
It didn't used to be.
Right.
Um,
Right.
But what I mean is that they're not involved. There's all of this faith
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't go anywhere or doesn't leave the living room
Mm-hmm.
out of fear.
Hmm.
Fear that I'm going to be taken advantage of. Fear that, they're afraid of drugs and crime.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So even letting their kids run down to the church
Mm.
for kids club, there's an apprehension in that, and there probably should be.
Mm-hmm.
We are overwhelmed with meth and heroin.
In this neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that there's not one family,
Mm.
and I'm not trying to exaggerate or make a point. There's not one family that hasn't been touched by addiction. There's not one family in the congregation that hasn't been touched by addiction.
Right.
Of various
Mhm.
kinds, mostly drugs and
Sure.
alcohol.
Sure.
But what I did want to say was that when you don't get involved in a group, when you don't get involved in a congregation, then you never bump into each other
Mm-hmm.
and get those rough edges smoothed off. You never get polished, or you don't grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking maybe
Sure.
emotionally or spiritually or in faith.
Mhm.
Your walk doesn't your Christian walk doesn't leave your living room,
Right.
and so then it doesn't impact how you raise your kids, or you just didn't know it should.
Ah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
It never, since you weren't in a group that was growing
Right.
together to get those rough edges polished off
Mhm.
as we bump into each other in
Right.
Christian community, you never knew that your faith should extend to work, to school, to relationships, to kids.
Right, right. So we're knocking on
So I
the
don't
door,
say it in a
you're trying to
negative
just
way.
pulling them out and drawing them in so that Thursday they start.
It's just presence.
Yes.
It
Do you
is
see
just
much
presence.
carryover from those who attend on Thursday night
Yes.
and to Sunday morning now?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And so the numbers are going up on Sunday
Yes.
morning through that?
Mhm.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. So what other, what?
But these aren't people who are going to. These are people who are going to. I mean, it's going to take. So the new group that we have coming
Yes.
in now,
Yes.
it's going to take 15 years for them to. Gosh, I'm using Christian language, and I don't.
That's okay.
I don't want anything to be lost
Right.
because I'm doing that.
We can work together on that. So,
Okay.
So it'll take 15 years for them to be mature in
That's
their
right.
faith.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is-
and I don't say that as a negative thing.
Right.
I
It's
just
a
say it as a
journey, it's
factual
road.
thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And 15 years is a long time.
Yeah. That was actually the commitment that Lindsay and I made when we
Okay.
moved.
All
we
right.
were going to plant here for 15 years no matter what.
All right.
And our doorstep would be here. Actually, and that's this year.
I was going to
15
say,
year-
I'm
yeah.
doing the math, and this is the 15th
right.
year.
Mhm.
So are you extending that now? Or do you know? Have you discussed it?
We have discussed it. And we're not going to, I don't think we're going to do anything different.
Going to keep on keeping on.
That's right.
All right, so I can see that you're doing in the wider community. What other responsibilities does this church hold for the wider community besides that pulling in on Thursday night?
In the past, there was a big clothing program for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it still goes on the first Saturday of each month. People bring their children, and we have like a clothes closet, all separated, and some of it's new, some of it's washed, all sizes for children.
So where does that come from, and who does the work on
Well,
that stuff?
Donated from, there was mostly the women's group is constantly looking for opportunity to get children's clothing.
Free or low cost?
It's free.
Okay.
Mhm. So, long-term plan,
Mm-hmm.
in my experience and estimation, food pantries, clothing closets work best when they are run and organized by people who do use them or have used them in the past.
Yes.
So the most helpful thing isn't for someone, and I'm not putting this, I'm not saying I'm not putting this down, but the most helpful thing isn't for the city or the Red Cross is more
A
emergency.
philanthropic group, we'll
Right,
say.
yes.
A philanthropic group to come in.
Yes, or a group who lives in the Westdale area to come in and give clothes away on us. No, actually, the best way would be for the neighbor who lives there next door, who has children or grandchildren, to form a group of ladies or men who will run this and organize it in a way for the neighborhood, so that we have neighborhood residents organizing the program, because they're going to see the best way to do it, because they've used it themselves in the past.
Sure.
Yeah, and so my job in that would be to disciple, train, resource, give blessing, permission, push.
Sure. Push.
Yeah,
Right.
them
Right.
into leadership positions.
Good. So you have neighbors that are running the clothes.
Yeah, so we're in transition because some of the folks who ran the clothing have passed away, and we're
Ah.
not sure what we're going to do with it. However, the food pantry is a different thing,
Okay.
and we're going to restart that.
Where will you get the food from that? Will you be in line
Second
with
Harvest.
the other food pantries in the city?
We will organize it so that it's on a day and a time that is not taken up by another place. So if there's an opening in the city or the county, that's where we're going to go. And yes, we have a lady who lives down the street, and my role is resourcing her in order to, and she's doing a fantastic job of figuring out how to do this well.
Very good. Very good.
She set up the appointment at Second Harvest. We're keeping a binder and organizing everything, a list of questions and how we're going to respond to those and answers. She's just doing a fantastic job. And she herself is someone who has used food pantries.
So she understands.
That's exactly right.
So what about some of the other programs that you have going on that help the wider community?
Okay. I wouldn't say that we have a whole lot.
Okay.
Other than those.
Well, those are big, and that's fine. What about?
I do try to get the other thing. It's not programmatic. It's more one-to-one. But I'm always trying to get, whether it be folks in the neighborhood who don't come to church or people in the church, I'm always trying to get them into the Y. The YMCA, or like there's a class that meets here and there called Silver Sneakers, and it's for age group. And it doesn't matter what your range of motion or ability. If you have to use a walker, you can. There's still exercises for you. I'm always trying to get people connected to that. If I go into a home, without fail, health, food, and addiction. I mean, those are the three things. And our grocery store just closed.
Yes.
That grocery store, you could go inside and it would be packed, and yet there wouldn't be any cars in the parking lot because everyone had walked there.
Everyone had walked, right? Right.
We just lost it.
Yeah, yeah. So the people that moved in, are the people that are here now, were they here before and stayed, or has it been a slow
It's half and half.
trickle?
Yeah, so we have I would say half of our group on Sunday morning has been here for many years. The other half have come in the last 3.
What about the houses that were around you, the community around you? When the workers left, who stayed or who came in? You said you had a lot. It was a big meth problem.
Yep.
Are these people who
people
are just
who's-
in the houses, or have they bought the houses?
The people who stayed are retired.
Okay, and that's why they're fearful.
The people who came in are 2 groups. One is the group of people that move from neighborhood to neighborhood every few months along the south side and east side of the city. And then the second group that moved in were people going to community college and going to get a physician assistant degree, or a business assistant degree, or working on dental hygiene degree. So they're younger, usually unmarried, but living in a large family with kids. And those are the groups that will even, they're not all Caucasian. And so there's a tension between the people who stayed and the people that are coming in.
Yes.
1, because they're renters. 2, because they move all the time. And then that third group who is going to community college, they're mixed.
Yes.
And that you'll really see that divide between the north and south of 12th Street.
What a perfect
So it's
storm.
much more acceptable around the
Sure.
church, right in this little strip. It's not acceptable on the south side of 12th to have inter or multi-ethnic relationships.
Interesting. It's interesting how the times are changing, yet they stay the same. So what kind of programs are you looking forward to in the future? Do you do anything for the addicts that are around?
Yeah. We connect them with a thing that is called, I guess we do things. I just don't think of it in terms of.
Right. Because it's just a part of your fiber.
Right.
So I have to
Yeah.
pull it out.
There are two places that we send folks. Well, I should say three. They're cut. Ready? There are three places that we send folks for addiction issues, and it could be family members, or it could be the person with the addiction issue themselves. The first one is there's an association of meetings of called Brianna's Hope.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you are willing, they will send you to a treatment facility that doesn't cost. And
Yes.
at the meetings, are you familiar?
Just a little bit.
Did you have good or bad experience?
Excellent experience.
Okay. So they'll send you and pay for it. If the person is willing, it's almost as if there isn't anything they won't do. And then at the meetings, they have a community meal throughout the city and the county at different locations, different days of the week. The one we send to is a Tuesday evening at Main Street United Methodist.
Mm-hmm.
And they also publish a list of employers who will hire felons.
Such as In and Out.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's right.
Mhm.
So, and you can go there you can go in there and you don't have to do anything. You can just show up and eat,
Mm-hmm.
or you can enter a program,
Mm-hmm.
or you could be the mother who doesn't know what to do with the son or daughter
Right.
and go there. So there's the first one. The second one, there's a recovery meeting on Monday nights at the South Madison building.
Oh, okay.
And it is, I know this sounds strange to say this, but it's important and necessary. It's a multi-ethnic meeting.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah, on the Monday nights. And then the third place, the Muncie Mission.
Okay.
Now the Muncie Mission is just for men, and they have they have programs where you can just stay, you can get a place to sleep and
Yes.
eat, or you can enter into phases and go through the problem. And they're just now adding housing to the last exit step.
Like a halfway house.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Good.
the folks that I know who do the program, and we all know that most people are going to relapse a few times.
A few times.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean that's just a given. So include that given.
That's
but
right.
people who complete that program,
Mm-hmm.
job opportunities open up, ministry opportunities open up. I am really thrilled with the men in our church who are in the program
Yes.
and who have completed the program. They are reliable, die-hard friends who would go to the mat with you, are interested in community, are interested in the gospel, have found who they are, and boy, they're just great folks.
They've come from the edge, and
Yes,
now they're back.
they're
in the
great
middle.
folks.
Yes. All right. Okay. So,
Give me a church full of Muncie Mission graduates.
and you would have an evangelical mission-based church,
That's right. Mhm.
All right. So, so I kind of found that out. What are some other things in the community that comes through your door that you send them to? What are some other issues that you deal with? Which will lead us to more organizations do you work with? Do you work
Yeah,
with
okay,
the city
so-
government? Do you work with
Meridian,
Meridian?
yes, mental health counseling.
Okay.
I will connect people there, help them. If they ask, I'll go to the appointments with them, and help get a liaison assigned
Okay.
to them. A lot of folks that are involved in addiction. Again, this is anecdotal. This is just my experience.
Mm-hmm.
They would be, if they had grown up in a different situation, they would be seeing a psychiatrist, getting a prescription, and going to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Um,
But they've lived their life toughing it out and,
and trying to find what they could do
right,
to alleviate the
Right.
whatever.
right. So,
So Meridian would be one that
Right.
I send
Okay.
people to. That's all we have actually.
right,
Brianna's Hope, Muncie Mission, the YMCA for health for exercise classes.
what about health and education and I know if you've got meth and addiction, you've got little babies.
Yep.
What do you do for, is there anything, do they come to you? Do you have?
So it's all informal. It's but there's a growing number of young parents who have signed up for foster care.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, trustworthy, all through this near South Side. Trustworthy families that foster, and I'll even tell you that some of them foster children even outside the system.
Right.
And those families some of them choose to sign up to receive children who may be going through withdrawal after birth, kind of thing. But again, it's a really strong network, but it's not formalized.
Okay. What about other churches besides Urban Light? Do you have linkages with other churches?
Yes, right. So it's very traditional for Methodist churches in a location to do stuff in a cluster. And so we do some of those things with the older congregations around here. At one time, it was great planning. I mean, it was wonderful. The Methodist Church wanted to have a congregation in each neighborhood. The neighborhoods were clearly defined by businesses and taverns and grocery stores. And there would be a church. So there was a church in the next neighborhood over, and then there was Avondale, and then there was South Madison, and then there was Trinity and Industry, then Fountain Square, South. Right, if you can, the one over there has closed. The one on South Madison,
Is
the
now Urban
Methodist
Light?
closed. Right,
Okay.
but there's still a vibrant church there.
Yeah.
And in an effort to raise up leaders to make this their home base and not close Avondale, that's what we're doing right now.
Okay. So what role, if any, do you see for churches and faith communities in cultivating a sense of citizenship among their members? Do you see a connection between church and citizenship?
Absolutely. Like one of the job descriptions for one of the employees at the church that we planted, it's a young church, Urban Light, half of his job description is to work and volunteer at other organizations.
All right. All right.
This changed, but for a period of time, we had a counseling a professional mental health counselor who had an office in the building.
At Avondale?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
She moved on to a different practice. I would like to have someone here again.
Paid by Avondale?
No, this
Or
person
paid by her clients?
paid by her clients.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like an independent. Or someone who would come and work a few hours through another organization. But here, we need that citizenship. Define citizenship.
That's a hard one. Maybe we could go towards discipleship and evangelism. And a citizen would be someone who, I guess, would make their place of living a better place to live. So you're doing a lot of that.
Yeah,
Does that translate to the people in the pews?
it does. So some of the folks here have their garden plot across the street for the summer.
Okay.
So there are boxes over there, and if you want a box or a half a box of a raised bed, It can be, it's just yours for the summer, and you take whatever you do with it,
Oh,
plant it,
okay.
harvest it, it's yours.
Right.
There's that going on. I guess
Are you
I'm having
involved?
trouble.
Are you involved? Is there any linkage between the church and the people in the church and you and people in public office?
Okay.
I know that you're getting funds because you
Mhm.
work with them in that
Mhm.
way to get funds that
Mhm.
help this community grow.
Yeah. At this time, I'm going to pass on that question.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
That sounds good. And then I think we've just about touched on what I need to touch on, but do you have
Has
anything
anyone
else?
else wanted to answer public office questions at this time?
Well, I just was throwing in, some of them have, like Blood and Fire
Mm-hmm.
meets regularly, I think, with the mayor and finds out what
I'm on the
their-
forestry committee.
Okay.
I don't know if that
All
matters
right,
to you.
yeah.
We property values increase a certain percentage in places that have mature trees,
Oh, okay.
and there are all kinds of auxiliary benefits of having mature trees.
Sure.
And so I got invited to be on the forestry committee this year, and we don't have a large budget and we can't do much, but we are doing some things. I plant trees everywhere.
Well, overall, I think you've already mentioned many ways where your church is working with your people as good citizens to raise the whole neighborhood. I think that's really your whole.
One of the ladies that teaches the Silver Sneakers classes,
Yes.
which goes to church here,
Okay.
and so it's real easy to connect people with her,
Sure.
and she can get them involved.
Yeah.
And it's either no cost or $1 or something like that
Uh-huh.
to take those classes, and the bus will drop you off right there.
Nice, nice.
Um,
Well, I think really your whole mission in
trying to
life.
figure out a citizenship, though.
When you first started today, you said your main responsibility was to make this a good place for people to be and to raise up this community,
Yeah.
which is basically citizenship.
Yep. So I think we inherited, if I can talk about theology for just a minute.
Sure.
North America, in greater and lesser parts, had since for over 100 years, has inherited this separation between spiritual
Yeah.
and physical.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean is that you'll have a group of conservative, quote, conservative churches that they're all about the salvation of the soul, heaven, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But they exclude a lot of leaky roofs, sidewalks.
Well, that's something that I don't
Food.
think that you've gotten to this morning, and I'll interrupt you there,
Mm-hmm.
is because I believe that you have made a point to take the empty houses
Yeah.
and make them look attractive.
Yeah.
And I think, talk a minute about those kind of things
Okay.
that has made your neighborhood
Right.
a better, more approachable place. I think you've got
Yeah.
a park going.
Yep.
Maybe that's what I want to get at
Okay.
here.
All right. I will answer that. The other side would be very focused on social problems and social issues.
Yes.
And those two groups kind of criticized each other for quite some time. The salvation group criticized the social group, and the social group criticized the salvation group. And there's absolutely, it's stupid. The gospel is a whole thing for whole people, for the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And so focusing, I don't see much difference in food, salvation of the soul, mold remediation, apple trees, obesity. You know what I mean? I just don't see much difference. Heaven, they're all kind of just one together. So yeah, putting in pocket parks. There's this fantastic pocket park on South Jefferson. It was an empty lot. It has a couple mature trees on it. And Lowe's helped us with building benches and a play structure, a tire swing.
Nice.
It's fantastic. You'll go there. In the summer, there's people in and out all the time, has some grills.
Good.
But during the school year, it's fantastic because right after the kids get out of school, it's just packed. you know, and it's a safe place
Sure.
that everyone feels comfortable sending their kids to go to. One of the other sort of creative things that we've done is on houses that are abandoned, painting OSB to look with black and white paint
Okay.
to look like windows and doors,
Yes.
and then attaching them on. So as you come by the house, just out of the periphery, it doesn't look like broken windows and abandoned. It looks like doors and windows.
Sure.
Yeah, that actually is significant.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It just makes people feel whole, like you said.
Yeah. And so what are the plans with those houses? You know, we're still working. Some of them will come down, some of them will be rehabbed. And the CDC, the majority of the rehab is for residents. So it's somehow people who have been connected somehow in the network, have grown, have developed, and now they're ready to own or rent, and already in the place that they have grown and connected, now there's housing.
Good.
And trying to keep it, we had, this is kind of technical, but before 2008, 2009, there was equity in order to take
yes.
a home and bring it to where it needs to be. There was equity to do that.
Right.
After that, there was none.
Right.
And we have just this year, just last month, have finally, in some situations, broke even.
Interesting.
So the
I had
equity-
not thought about the
yeah,
cost of the houses.
Right.
It would just plummet.
Right. But even so, you buy the house, and then what it takes to bring it to where it needs to be is not going to. It's going to be higher than the value that the banks would permit.
Yes. Yes.
But anyway, just this year, there's a couple properties that it was even. So that was fantastic.
So that gives you a spark of hope.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So that addresses the citizenship very well.
Absolutely.
That this community is starting to look whole,
Yep.
to take care of themselves. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
All right. All right.
Wow,
What do you see
this
this
has
looking
been
like in
fun.
10?
This has been fun.
What do you think this is going to look like in 10 years?
I see a church that is open 7 days a week, that there are lots of folks who are taking initiative to do what they've been called to do and using this space for it. I see kids that we send to music lessons, playing in the band as they grow up on Sunday mornings. Probably adding, we're going to address something with food. I don't
Okay.
know.
All right.
I don't know what. I don't know how.
And is that part of all of that where you mentioned the group came in, the group that was here melding, and the new?
The new, exactly. Yep. So the answer to the food issue or the grocery store issue is the answer is unknown. But we'll find it together. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you for your hard work
Yeah.
for the citizens of this community.
I love living here.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Josh.
Mhm.